Good morning. I'm Mike Allegra, the President and CEO of the Utah Transit Authority, and I'm honored to be able to host this panel today with three great mayors from three incredible cities. I've been in the business a long time, 4 decades. I started my career here in Virginia, and I appreciate the fact that C-SPAN is here to frankly help spread the dialogue about investments in transportation. You know, in Utah, we have benefited significantly by our partnerships with the federal agencies. Our first full funding grant agreement came to us in 1997. Subsequently to that, we've gotten 6 full funding grant agreements, have built 140 miles of rail in 14 years, perhaps the quickest in this nation, and we are benefiting significantly by that investment. A decade or so ago, our community, state and local governments, in partnerships with the federal agencies, decided and made a commitment to invest their tax resources in transportation, highways and transit. We now are one of the best economic states in the country. I will tell you that no elected official has lost their job because of that commitment that they made a decade ago. In fact, our governor is now the chairman of the National Association of Governors. Our state senate is the chairman of the National League of Legislators. Our Chamber of Commerce, Lane Beatty, has become on the national board of the Chamber of Commerce. And our mayor of Salt Lake City is now the president of the National League of Cities. And so we are looked at, I believe, as a state that is well-run, knows how to get things done, but recognizes that investments in infrastructure are one of the key pillars to economic growth and vitality. And so we're here today with 3 incredible mayors that are going to talk to you about their stories. But before I do that, I wanted to read the President of the United States, I've been told, is competing with us today because he's at the National League of Cities. And so I very much appreciate these mayors being here. But I have a statement I want to read to you from Mayor Ralph Becker, who is the president of the League of Cities. And he says, quote, "The National League of Cities and the American Public Transit Association have enjoyed a close working relationship for many decades, the results of which have been tremendous transit progress for those cities we serve. Our great transit accomplishments in the Salt Lake region is an important example of the benefits of this collaboration. As the NLC president and mayor of Salt Lake, I look forward to continuing to work with APTA towards a long-term, well-funded transportation reauthorization this year. The president's proposed Grow America Act is an important contribution to this must-do reauthorization effort." So with that, those that participated yesterday in the legislative conference heard from a gentleman called Jeff Loving. He represents America's Infrastructure Alliance. He made 3 key points that will be the focus of today's conversation. Number 1, make it local. Okay? You have local here. Number 2, talk about economic benefits and commerce. Talk about how transportation does what it's done in Utah. Talk about how it will affect your community. And lastly, perhaps most importantly, investments save money. Now is the time to make an investment because it'll pay dividends in the future. You won't be borrowing. It will cost you less. And I think the mayor of Riverton will talk about that as we do some local efforts in that regard. So you're hearing from 3 strong, conservative, fiscally responsible, energetic, motivated, fast-growing communities, each of which have a passion for transportation and transit. These mayors have a vitality of their own, and they are developing a sense of place in a community like no others. I like to say that the cities that are surrounding them, Salt Lake and Dallas and Phoenix, are suburbs to their cities there, okay? So let me have you buckle up your seatbelts because you're in for a ride here. I'm going to introduce the three mayors in the order that they're going to speak, and then pose three main topics today. First off, I want to hear and have them share with you stories about their city and what their vision is. Second, they're going to drill down a little bit and talk about transportation and their transit projects and what they see its benefits to its community is what their future for transportation are. And then lastly, we're going to zero in on the partnerships with federal agencies and things that we can do together, and perhaps offer some recommendations to APTA, the things we can do to be great partners with local governments. So the first mayor to my left here on your right is, Mayor Betsy Price. She is the mayor of Fort Worth, Texas. It's the 16th largest city in the United States. Established in 1849, I think, Mayor. It was an American outpost as part of the Mexican-American War. But what I found interesting in looking it up online is there were three transformational times in Fort Worth's history. Number one, they were part of the Chisholm Trail, the cattle drives, that initially established Fort Worth. Then they became the crossroads of the Texas and Pacific Railway, the second major boon to that city. And then in the early 1900s, they had close to 400 miles of streetcar in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Huge, huge investment in streetcars. So I think we're going to hear from the mayor today. As a mover and shaker, she was elected in 2001, the 44th mayor of this city. She leads efforts in engaging and designing a healthy community. She talks a lot about alternative modes of transportation, particularly walking and cycling, and maybe she'll talk to you about her walking and rolling town halls. She's an avid cyclist, yet she gets time to spend with her family, her husband, her children, and her three grandchildren. And apparently she's a proud Maverick with a bachelor's degree from the University of Texas at Arlington. Mayor John Giles from Mesa, Arizona. I looked up on Wikipedia. What a wonderful thing. They call Mesa, Arizona, the center of population for Arizona, Mayor.
Center of the universe.
What, center of the universe, I'm sorry.
Don't sell us short, yeah.
Third largest city in Arizona, the 38th largest city in the United States. And its history actually goes back 2,000 years ago, and maybe we'll hear about this with the Hohokam tribes, and they developed canals in those communities, another form of transportation. Mayor Giles is the 40th mayor of Mesa. He started his mayoralship in 2014, but he's had a long history with governments, being on the city council and in many, many organizations, boards, and committees. He has a poli-sci degree from BYU, Brigham Young University, so he's a cougar. He has a law degree from Arizona State and has managed and practiced and manages a law office of his own. And born and raised in Mesa, he's a marathoner. He's a triathlete. He has finished 2 full Ironmans. And this year, he's finished his 20th marathon and his 4th Boston Marathon. So I think, and I hope, we can keep up with him. Lastly, and not least, the mayor of Riverton City, Utah. From my community, Mayor Applegarth serves as the mayor. He's been there since 2006. This year they're celebrating their 150th birthday. It is a high-energy, high-growth community. Its population has exploded, and he'll tell you about that. It was listed by CNN as one of the top places to live in the United States. It also has a rich transit history. In 1913, it had the Salt Lake and Utah Railway, an interurban line that went right through its community there. So Mayor Applegarth has been on the city council. He's worked as an educator. He has a law degree, a doctorate from BYU, as a cougar as well. And he spent his entire career in the educational system. He does have 8 children and 30 grandchildren. And he is a leader in our community. He is on virtually every transportation community. Our relationship with the transit organization, and the MPO is the best I know of in the country, and it's kudos to Mayor Applegarth and the things that he does there. So with that, I'm going to ask the mayors to talk a little bit about their cities and what they're doing so they can paint the picture for you of what's going on in their cities, and then we'll move on into more transportation agendas. So we can start with either one of you.
You're mic'd.
Okay.
We're all mic'd, so yep.
Yes, okay.
Hopefully our mics weren't on. We've been up here talking. Yeah,
That's true.
I've been caught doing that a few times. So, you know, we're not Capitol Steps, and we know you're waiting to see Capitol Steps, although Mayor Giles said he would tap dance for you in a few minutes. In addition to running marathons, he's a tap dancer, and I guess we'll hum behind him, right?
Okay, we'll try.
You know, and I understand that you're coming to Cowtown, to Fort Worth in May, and I hope each and every one of you in this room will come. You're absolutely going to love it. We are the 16th, actually we're the 17th largest city now. We got beat out by 105 people in Charlotte in a midterm count. I think that's a statistical error. But we're one of the fastest growing cities in the nation since the year 2000. About 1,000 people a day come to Texas, and about 350 of those people land in Dallas or Fort Worth. So we are huge. We're 800,000 citizens now, and in the next 10 years, we'll be more than 1 million citizens. And, you know, we always say we're a big spread out city. Fort Worth is 352 square miles and 344 square miles of ETJ. So ultimately, we'll be a big, big landmass. And Texas Heritage, as you all know, we're obviously behind on mass transit because Bubba's and Bubbettes, and I'm one, we love our Suburbans and we love our pickups and things, and we're just now getting people to really think about public transit. We've always had it there. It's always served the working class. You mentioned streetcars. Believe it or not, we used to have the largest line of streetcars, Dallas and Fort Worth. We don't have a single streetcar any longer. So we really poured a lot of concrete. But we all know, as leaders, we know that you're never going to pour enough concrete to accommodate the growth. You're simply not. And our young leaders, our young millennials who are moving there for the high-tech jobs, for the defense industry jobs, aviation, tourism, all really want one car. And we're seeing them move back into the inner city as well as our suburb cities. But we have to rebuild those inner cities and keep them strong. And transit is the way. They want to be able to leave one car in their garage and not take it out, to take a circulator bus or to take a bus to the intermodal and really get around. And then they want that last mile to be a connection on bicycles. And we've really got a strong museum district. We had 65 million tourists last year in Tarrant County. We've redone our convention center and about to redo it again. Part of that is development from our transit system. Our intermodal that went in made a big difference on what we had done. But we are the fourth, Dallas and Fort Worth together, and Gary Thomas is here from DART somewhere. Even though we like to fuss about our friends in DART, we really are a huge region. And like many of you in this room, people tend to not be able to separate Dallas or Fort Worth. Now, once you come, you're going to be able to separate them easily, and you're only going to come back to Fort Worth. Because we are, John, the center of the universe. But our public, we have, in the last 2 years and for the next 3 years, we'll have $34 billion of infrastructure construction going on. We say you've got, everybody in Fort Worth's got orange cone syndrome. They hate them. They're sick of them. They're just sick of it. But we got to get our public transit better. We've got to get it where these millennials coming in, and then more importantly than the millennials, the silver tsunami is here. The number of people who turn 65 a day and will for the next 10 years, if you haven't Googled it, Google it. It'll blow your mind how many of us there are, and I'm one of those. And they tell me all the time, we want transit because we want to age in place. We're not going to drive much longer. Hopefully they will, but not many of them won't. They want to be able to take transit, but they want it to be technical savvy. They want to pull up a next bus locator and see when the bus comes. Texas is hot. Fort Worth is 110 in July and August. And you don't want to stand on the corner looking for your bus. You want to be able to be in your office or in your home and say, oh, here it comes. All I got to do is walk down the street and catch it. And we're beginning to get there, and the federal government has helped with some of that. But it's also got to be sexy. It's got to be a ride that appeals to people. They've got to be able to put their bicycle on the front, which they currently can, hop on the bus, go to work, take their bike off, and complete that last mile. And it really is a major reason for us. We're just not going to accommodate all the cars that we have. My friends that are in the car business hate it when I say that, because they say, we're going to keep selling them. I said, keep selling them. We're going to try to keep parking them and put them on buses. But gridlock will kill us. The growth that we've seen already, the major arterial from Mexico across the U.S., Interstate 35, runs through Fort Worth, and it's the best parking lot in the nation. And we're actively remodeling it. In the next 4 years, it will be remodeling. It's not the proper term, but renovating it. And there will be an express lane, courtesy of a federal grant, down the center. We have a development on the far north edge of Fort Worth. It's in Tarrant County and Denton County both, but it's Fort Worth city limits, called Alliance Town Center. And Alliance Town Center sprung up from an old ranch property. It is now 35,000 jobs and rapidly growing, one of the largest retail centers that we've got. But part of our development incentive is that anywhere from 5 to 15% of the employees there, to get a tax incentive, have to come from the inner city. And we've struggled with getting them up 35 to Alliance Town Center. And when 35 is redone, the T, which is our transit authority, will run an express bus up in the morning and reverse it and run it back down in the evening. And then they will have to develop a circulator system to get there. And that's already in the master plan. And I'll talk just a second, then I'll let them speak about the T. The T is our transit system funded by a 50-cent sales tax from city sales tax, and then federal grants and rider fees. It's been very successful. Our next big project is TexRail, our light rail. We have one rail project now. It was the first rail project, and it's a joint project with DART, the TRE, the Trinity Rail Express, and it's about 8,000 riders a day, and it's a commuter line between Dallas and Fort Worth. And it's been successful because young people and all people really, they just don't see that boundary between the cities. They like to be able to come and go to dinner, go to shop, come to Fort Worth to go to the stockyards, to go to the museums, and back and forth. But our next big project is going to be a light rail project, and we're excited about that. So come see us. You're going to love it.
Thanks, Mayor. Excellent.
Well, thanks for letting me be here. Things are so crowded over at the National League of Cities right now with the president coming that we were joking that we kind of drew the long straw, and we're lucky to come over here and avoid all the chaos that's at the other side of town right now. So thanks for giving us a convenient out from that activity over there. I'll respectfully disagree as to where the location of the center of the universe is, I think.
We could have 2 centers.
Well, right, it's a dual-edged sword there. If I'm a little bit grouchy that I'm here instead of there right now, it's because during March, Mesa literally is the center of the baseball universe. We're a big spring training city, and frankly, if I wasn't here right now, I'd be sitting in the city box watching either the Chicago Cubs. We're a 2-stadium city, so we'd have either the Cubs or the A's, and I'd be wearing short sleeves and sipping a Diet Coke with my feet up, having a great time. So. I invite everyone to come to Mesa. March is a great time to be there, especially because of all the spring training activity. The weather's perfect, and we have a lot of out-of-town guests. So next time you're looking for something to do in March, put Mesa, Arizona on your map. Mesa is a great place. We're one of the larger cities that maybe is not a household word in your lexicon out here. We kind of anchor the East Valley, the east part of the Phoenix metropolitan area, where about 500,000 people, 37th largest city in the country, second largest city in the Phoenix metro region. Kind of big on our own, but still very much a part of the Phoenix transportation system. The MAG, Maricopa Association of Governments, and other regional transit authorities, we are the beneficiary of a lot of our funding through them. So we're the beneficiary of having that asset, directly to our west. But again, on our own, a pretty advanced, large city. Well, there was recently, I think a few months ago, an interesting article in Forbes that labeled Mesa the most conservative city in the United States. I think, and as a large, if you look up here, there's not a lot of large urban cities that have kind of a conservative bent to them, but you see probably 3 examples of that phenomenon up here right now. And so it's an interesting location to analyze the popularity of transit systems. So I'm curious to hear my fellow panel members talk a little bit about that. We are a large city. We're a growing city as well. Economically, we are still trying to claw our way out of the downturn, but we do have a lot of things going for us. We have a large Boeing facility in Mesa. We just had an announcement of a new $2 billion Apple facility in Mesa. So we're riding a good wave of economic development, but at the same time, we have that. I grew up in Mesa in a downtown area that in my childhood was part of the old Route 66. And so we had motels and a very vibrant, interesting downtown in Mesa back in the 60s and early 70s. Of course, with the advent of freeways being built to the north and the south of us, our downtown just kind of withered up and died and went to large big box malls. I think I see a lot of smiling faces. People recognize this scenario. It's been duplicated all over the country. So we're kind of a poster child for that whole, we had a great downtown. We built malls and freeways. Downtown withered up and died. And I was on the city council back in the 90s, and we would find every possible way to try to pump some life into our downtown that was literally a ghost town. And we threw a lot of money at it, and nothing really seemed to stick. And towards the end of my service on the council back in the 90s, when I felt like I'd worked all that out of my system, one of the last votes I had was, do we participate in this regional transit program that's going to bring light rail to the edge of our city? And I remember being more than skeptical about the merits of this proposal, thinking, well, this is kind of cute, this kind of Walt Disneyland, ride that will come into our city, but I don't really see it being something that's going to help us from a transportation perspective. But I reluctantly agreed to go along with this communist conspiracy of bringing these silly little cars to the edge of our community, and thought, well, I might live to regret that vote. I have to tell you, I am so delighted to come back now to city government and be, no one's ever been happier to be entirely wrong than I think I am. Light rail has been a huge boon to our economy. Light rail has proven to be very successful as a transportation system to Mesa. The millennials, seniors particularly, for reasons that you know better than I, are very attracted to that. And we've exceeded ridership. We're 10 years ahead, in fact, in the popularity of the ridership of light rail coming into Mesa. But as popular and as successful as it has been as a transportation system, I have to tell you, it's been more successful as an economic redevelopment system. That downtown urban core that I described to you earlier of these motels and other businesses that were dying, the property values along that light rail route have just skyrocketed. And we're excited that this fall we're going to open light rail right through our downtown core. The construction is pretty much complete, and we've seen all this economic development activity. Then we have another 2 miles going further to the east that will be opened in 2 more years. So through a variety of creative and aggressive financing models with the help of regional dollars and federal dollars, we've been able to pull this off, and it's really going to breathe life back into the core of my community that like I say, I and everybody that I know of had pretty much given up on. So I'm here to tell that story and to encourage everyone to use us as a place to look to when you want to get excited about light rail. Mesa, like these other cities, I think we are fairly spread out. We're about 150 square miles, and so we're kind of a spread out urban, suburban community. So light rail is got a lot of excitement, but at the same time, we're so spread out, we have to figure out other ways. One train track going down the middle of our community is not going to have a huge impact on all of our transit needs. So we've tried to be sensitive to that. There's a lot of park and rides that are worked into this model. As we progress further east, this next 2 miles going forward is going to take it actually out to where people live in our community. So I think we'll see the commuter aspect of light rail become more and more relevant as we continue to push a little bit further east out into our neighborhoods. But like I said, from a commercial perspective, from just generating excitement about a part of our town that people looked to with some amount of disappointment and almost shame, this has been tremendously successful, and I encourage you to take another look at Mesa. Thank you.
Well, I'm at a little dog city up here today. I want to make sure you understood one thing, though, Mike said in the introduction. When he talked about it was our 150th anniversary, I hope you realize that was the city and not mine. With all this gray hair, I wouldn't want you to get confused on it in that way. But I come from Riverton, Utah. I wasn't born and raised there. I was born and raised in Southern California and moved to Riverton in 1975. We're 20 miles south of Salt Lake City, so we're in the metropolitan area. But when I moved there, there were 3,000 people in 1975. In 2015, we have 42,000 people approximately. And by 2030, or I believe we'll be built out before then, or by then at least, we'll have 60,000 people. We're 12.6 square miles. I didn't leave a zero off there. We're 12.6 square miles. And we have a general fund budget of $9.2 million to kind of give you a feel for our city. As I became mayor a little over 9 years ago, I wrote down some goals that I wanted to accomplish, some emphasis. I wrote down some of my philosophy and what I wanted to do that way. And one of the things I wrote down in my philosophy that wasn't in my campaign, but in my philosophy as I took office, is my major job was to spend money. Not to save money, but to spend money, but to spend it in the right way. And then as I analyzed and had when I was on the council, and probably true in your area, the very negative funding for us is property tax. If you raise property tax, they want to hang you by the nearest tree. If there's not a tree, they'll just run over you with their pickup truck. It doesn't matter, whichever way. But you don't mess with property tax. And so I got our city out of the property tax business. We fund our city basically by two sources, sales tax and utility franchise taxes. And when you do that, people don't care where you spend money. As long as you don't raise their taxes, they are fine. And we raise the taxes by good economic growth that I'll talk about in a minute. And so that is where we have come from, and that has allowed me to do that in that way. Philosophically, for my goals, my overarching goal or principle is, if it doesn't improve the quality of life for our citizens, why do it? My job is to spend money to improve the quality of life. I also inherited an area in this 12.6 square miles. I inherited an area that was a lot of farmland. And then what permanent buildings we had in what I would call downtown Riverton, most of those have been taken away through widenings of roads by UDOT. And so we had a pretty clean, clear canvas that we could develop. And when I went on the council, there was a senior city council member, and his slogan was, which I adopted in my own mind as well, you only have one time to build out a city, build it out right. And so that became the overarching goal too, and so we don't have a lot of economic redevelopment. We have economic development because of that, which has been a blessing for us. And these aren't necessarily in the order of importance, but they're the goals that I've had all the time. One is to have and develop open space. And we developed open space, started with parks. And in the 9 years that I've been in as mayor, a little over 9 years, we spent $28 million on parks. And that's not a lot of money for you folks in one way, but for us, $9.2 million for our general fund, we spent a lot of money on parks. Our last project will be finished June 22nd, and we will be open. It was our old historic main park. It was falling apart. It had been built in the 50s by volunteers. The sewer didn't work, the power didn't work, the buildings were old. We're just completing a $17 million project where we took the park down to the dirt, and everything has been replaced except the dirt. And we even brought in more topsoil, so in a way we replaced the dirt as well. But that project is being completed, and we've turned it into instead of a baseball park, it has been turned into a passive park. We built in 2010, we built a new baseball park, spent $7 million on that. So that is just a baseball and football park for our young people to be involved in organized sports, and some soccer, and some tournaments with girls baseball. We have another park for girls baseball. But this was a passive park. Our other parks generally are programmable parks for youth sports because we have a high percentage of youth in our area. We have a very young population because of the growth. So now we're taking and we're moving into the second part of that, and that is we're now moving to trails. We have, because we were farmland, we have irrigation canals that bisect our city. We have 5 of those. In every canal, if you're aware of the West and irrigating instead of dry farming, you have a road next to it, a path next to it for canal maintenance. We have the Jordan River that is on our east boundary. The Jordan River has a nice trail that has been put on down the Jordan River and completed in our area. We're now in the designing and working with canal companies to move ahead and put trails along canal companies as well. We're basically concerned with active transportation, which is we're moving, and that is becoming our city engineer's major focus in that regard. We'll talk about our road transportation later, but we're pretty well completed on that, and we've spent quite a bit of money on that as well. But we're moving to the trails. We got young people, we got old people that like to walk, so we need bike trails, walking trails, running trails, and in part of our city, horse trails. There's part of our city that we're moving towards higher densities and will be in high densities, so there's no horses up there. But in the traditional part of our city, we have horse trails and are expanding those as well as we go along and do that in that way. The third goal we've had is economic development. It's critical to us to develop right because we're so dependent upon sales tax and franchise tax. And so we're in the process right now of finishing a deal that hopefully will bring about $400 million of construction into commercial construction into our area. Principally a retail development, a regional retail development with some office space, a hotel, and big boxes as well. During my administration, we've had the opportunity of seeing big boxes move in. So we have the Walmarts, we have 2 Walmarts in our city. We have Home Depot, we have Lowe's, we have Kohl's. Before that, we had Peterson's Market and Riverton Drug. And so it's been fun to see those develop. Development in our county comes from the north and from the east. And so I learned easily and quickly that you have to wait your turn. But I just didn't want to sit there, so my time was spent a lot of infrastructure improvements, and that's what's going on now. We'll finish out our infrastructure improvements in the next couple of years in that way. So economic development is important to us. If you're familiar with Salt Lake, we're in the southwest part of Salt Lake. We sit in a valley surrounded by mountains or the lake. We are very narrow. I'm not sure how wide we are. I would guess about 15 miles wide in that regard. And so we have this corridor, and right now, when I moved there was one road out of Riverton because of the Jordan River was a barrier to us, and the sensitivity that we all have in our area for the lands around the environment around the Jordan River, and not to interfere with that very much. We now have 2 roads out of Riverton. One is Bangor Highway, a road that carries about 45,000 people a day. And so we've widened our other roads so that we have roads, our other road that we had out of Riverton handles 30,000 people a day. We have Bangor Highway, which goes north and south and east and west. It circles because we're against the foothills where you can't go directly out. We've had those kinds of things in mobility going forth, and we'll talk about that a little later. But it's important for us to include all aspects of transportation. Public transportation, an important part. Rail, a very important part, which we'll talk about a little later. As I mentioned, I grew up in Los Angeles, California. Grew up in the smog era. Grew up where you couldn't see the beautiful mountains because they were hidden a lot of the year by what we called smog in those times. Grew up as a healthy young man, but when you'd be too involved with athletics, your chest would hurt because of the air pollution that was in the area. Moved to Salt Lake and saw the big blue skies and the mountains and that, but have seen that deteriorate as population has come. A major goal that I have is air quality. We don't have we have some pollution, but we live between the mountains, and the winds move it out of our city a lot against the mountains. Even though the bad pollution in the Salt Lake Valley is not my direct responsibility geographically, it's my direct responsibility politically. That's another critical reason for rail as we develop it in our area. Thank you for letting me be here as a little dog. 9 years ago, when I got involved, my natural interest would have been to be involved with homeless shelters and those social programs. That's where I would normally like to move towards. We don't have any homeless in Riverton. I still take part on boards and help finance homeless shelters in Salt Lake from our city. But I realized that as mayor, the important thing I got involved with was roads. I was a teacher. What did I know about building roads and all of that? I was in my first elected office 13 years ago as a council member. What did I know about the political way to work? But I soon found, as I looked at grants that were coming our way and development coming our way as far as roads and so forth, I never saw Riverton's name on it that first year. And so I started asking, what do I need to do? And what do I need to be involved with? And this name probably will not mean anything to you, but Mayor Tom Dolan of a major city in our valley, he was gracious enough to go out to lunch with me and I could pick his brains. And he said, Bill, get involved in the transportation community. So I've learned the language, I've learned the politics, I have the passion, and it's critical to our city. The mobility part is a very, very critical issue, and that's why I've gotten involved. Thanks for letting me be here.
Hello. Thank you, mayors. I very much appreciate that. I'm going to ask us to drill down just a little bit into the transportation initiatives that you have. As you've picked up on, you've got a city that's got light rail under construction right now in Phoenix and Mesa. You've got one that's right on the cusp, Mayor.
That close.
Just about there. And we're happy to help you get over that line. And then Mayor Applegarth talks about future development and planning and preparing for future transportation investments. I was just in Phoenix last month and rode the line out to Mesa, saw the construction. The train in the middle of the day was full, and Mayor helped me, but it was with those silver tsunamis.
The silver tsunamis.
Silver tsunamis, we're packing that train and riding it around and loving it.
Right.
Okay? It's there. Ridership, as you know, APTA is at its highest point in its history. Utah Transit Authority is at its highest. People are screaming for transit service and alternatives and options. So we'd love to hear from you about a little more specifics about your project. And if you can focus on the benefits to your community, the economic benefits, the community benefits, perhaps, the environmental or energy benefits, congestion, those kinds of things that you think that transit will help in your communities?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned earlier, our ridership has really exceeded our expectation. We are currently at a place where we had hoped to be 10 years from now. And right now, light rail just comes to the edge of my community. We are at the end of the line for the Phoenix Transit line. This fall, probably end of this summer, we'll open 3 miles from the edge of our city and through the heart of our downtown, through literally down the middle of Main Street. And that, as I indicated earlier, from an economic development standpoint, has been just a huge blessing for us. And from a transportation point of view as well, it's a huge blessing. We have a fair amount of seniors. Arizona, particularly the East Valley and Mesa, is kind of viewed historically as a retirement community. We have one of the amenities that we do have in our downtown area is a huge $100 million plus performing arts center that is a magnet for seniors. So there's certainly, it's popular. We have a large senior population, and it's popular with the senior population, but statistically, actually, Mesa is a younger than average community. And so the millennials is what's been a surprise to me. You know, that obviously we're in our culture has changed, I think, in ways that we didn't anticipate 20 or 30 years ago. Folks now don't want to sit in cars. They don't want, if they can find any way to park a car and get on transit and it works with their lifestyle, they are going to do that more often than not. And that's certainly been the case in Mesa. So we have several large park and rides at the edge of our community where the system currently terminates. Huge parking lot, frankly, and part of the challenge that we're going to have as a community is once we move the terminus further and further east, we're going to go back and redevelop these parking lots that aren't quite as big a deal as they needed to be. And that's a great opportunity for us as well. It's going to provide some more economic development opportunity along this very active downtown light rail route. So it's tremendously popular. As it goes further and further east, it's going to continue to add, thousands and thousands more people as we reach, like I say, ultimately 4 or 5 years from now, we'll be, frankly, in the neighborhood that I live in, a very residential neighborhood, not, a low-income neighborhood. I could very easily hop in my car, travel a block or two, hop on the light rail, go to downtown Phoenix, go to all the sporting events at Arizona State University in downtown Phoenix, go to the airport, like I say, just a short car ride, a block or two to go to a light rail station. So I think when that happens, you'll see it impact not just the millennials and the seniors and people who, from a lifestyle point of view, are trying to avoid getting into cars, but you'll get to the average Joes like myself that see it as a viable transportation option as well.
Great. Mayor?
Yeah, I think that's true, and we have a focus in Fort Worth now on healthy communities. We have a Fit Worth initiative, and we have a Blue Zones initiative, and we will be by far the largest city today that's been designated Blue Zones. And if you can get people out of their community, out of their car, and back in their community, and transit can do that. Transit can allow them to walk and stand and visit, whether at all levels, whether it's the mobility impaired transit that allows them to get around, or whether it's young folks with strollers, young families, or it's the silver tsunamis. But getting that transit system expanded adds to the value and the vibrancy of your community. We started Trinity Rail Express in '96, partnered with Dallas, and I mentioned earlier that it was the first commuter line in the Southwest with about 2 million passengers a year. And then it set, but people used it, and now we're back. We realize that we've got to get light rail in. If we're really going to succeed where we want to be in the city, you've got the starts of it. And, our friends in Dallas have seen it, Houston, Austin, and so Fort Worth has been focused on our Tex Rail project, and it's our latest project, and it'll help not only with vibrant, strong, healthy communities, engaged communities, but with our air quality. Our buses are already on CNG. All our buses went to CNG, and like you in Salt Lake, we started seeing the air deteriorate in Fort Worth. There's a brown haze, and all of these will help. But TexRail will be our direct, to start out with, the goal is ultimately it will be networked out across all the city. But originally it's going to DFW Airport. The airport is jointly owned by the cities of Fort Worth and the city of Dallas. It's the third busiest airport in the world. And Dallas has had DART at the airport. You can come out of your terminal, hop on a people mover, and go to the DART link and be in Dallas. Now, if you're a traveling public, coming on business for a convention, or if you're coming just with your family for tourists, and you've got an option when you fly into the airport, you'd get a rent car, or it's a $70 cab ride to Fort Worth, or it's a what, Gary, $8 bus ride on the light rail to Dallas. What are you going to do?
I was on it last month.
Yeah.
It is fantastic.
It is fantastic. So we really realize that we have to return our focus on connecting to the airport first. And not only will it give us that competitive edge that we need to continue to grow and develop our convention trade, our tourism trade, but it also allows, we've got so many people who live in Fort Worth and work in Dallas. And if they can go to the intermodal center, hop on TexRail, go to the airport and hop over onto the Orange Line on DART and be in Dallas with no congestion. And, you know, everybody's married to their iPad or their iPhone. So you're not driving, so what can you do? You can work, or you can read the morning paper, or as my daughter used to say, she could put on her makeup and comb her hair when she took the rail, because she didn't do it in the morning. But we have, you know, our partner cities, the city of Grapevine and Richland Hills are partnered with us, and it'll be funded with our sales tax, and we have a request in for a full funding grant, and $50 million has been put in one budget and $100 million in this time's budget at the federal level. And the good news about the federal grants on this rail project is that it allows us to leverage our sales tax dollars. It's that leveraging that we would lose if we don't get our federal funding. So we're really excited about what TexRail will offer. Like y'all in Salt Lake, we have 54 miles of trails, and many people say, I want to take the train to the airport, get on a trail, and pedal back into Fort Worth. Or I want to go to Dallas and ride to Fort Worth, or I want to pedal to Dallas and then ride back to Fort Worth. You know, and we even get runners who say, we're going to go to Arlington, we're going to hop on a bus, go over to Centerport, get on the rail, and go into Dallas for dinner. It's an interesting concept that people are beginning to think very creatively and very innovatively about outside the box. But it's economic development, it's mobility, it's better air quality, it's engaged and healthy cities that really make a difference on light rail.
Great. My previous boss had a saying, if you like to text, Twitter, or tweet, take transit.
Yeah. That's right.
We're in an interesting time in our city. We have a culture, and we'll talk about this later, but we have a culture of unified transportation effort. Roads and transits are together. So we have that in our city, or in our state, pardon me. We also have, I came from a background of riding transit. As I worked downtown in downtown Salt Lake, rather than drive, I drove over to Sandy to get the TRAX line when that came in. I did express buses and just different ways. So I had a natural feel for transit. I was in a position where I was working 10 to 12 hours a day. As the mayor said, it gave me time back. I could answer my emails coming and going and that kind of a thing, so I had an interest in that. But transit is really a local issue. It's not locally financed in our area, nor could I, but it's a local issue. And so I was sitting in an MPO meeting, and they were talking about transit and so forth, and some of the new lines and the things that were happening, the projects were going forth, and there was nothing coming my way at all. There was nothing coming my way, close, you know, to my way. And so as I sat there, it irritated me. And so when I was there, I knew that I had to do something, that it was my job. So I raised an objection to it, and that we needed to study it in the Southwest Corridor there, a study, and I pledged $100,000 for that study. Now keep in mind that we're at $9.2 million general budget. When I went back to our city manager, and we were in a tight budget, and it was during the downturn, I said, Lance, you got to find me $100,000. His eyes just went like that into, you know, you got to be kidding me. What have you done? And so we jumped into the study. The study was a $2 million study, and it's going on now. We're finishing it up in the next few months, and it'll go before the city councils of the four cities that are involved in this. It'll go before the city council for the preferred corridor to do. Ended up being a $2 million study. UTA threw in, through their sources, $1 million. We pledged $500,000 and then went knocking on doors of the other 3 cities and some developers to get other money to round it off. And so it really is that kind of a local issue. And then where we are now, in addition to funding the study, that's only the start, we've had to work on corridor preservation. So our planning director, and I asked him so many times when new development was coming in, he just got sick of me. Do you have the setbacks far enough so that a transit corridor can go through this commercial area? The last thing we want to do is buy building at a time or a house at a time. And so we had some various routes, but we had to protect them because of our geography. There was only a couple of ways it could go anyway, so we had to protect those. So we moved into corridor preservation in that regard. And in our area for roads, we got developers to donate land for roads. We have big developments coming in now, and my expectation, I've already talked to them, my expectation is that we will get donated land for transit corridor. They're giving us farmland. It's not like they're giving us a building on it, they're giving us farmland. Right now, the transit project can go through our city without tearing down one dwelling. Now that's an accomplishment of corridor preservation, and I'm proud of what our people have been able to do with that. But that's only part of it in our area of study or our point of view too. One is to educate our people. The foundation of our city is farmland. Farmland and transit don't necessarily mix. But we have it urbanizing, and so we're trying to bring, through education, bringing both groups together. And we will do that so we have the people's support. The last thing that UTA needs, if they're going to build a line through our city, is for political pressure to come against that line and protesters lining their board meetings and not want it. If that comes, we will be dead in the water. And so that's a very, very important part to me as well. And then we'll talk about this later too. But to get in, it's my job as a mayor and my colleagues' job as mayors in our state to get involved in transportation funding. I don't believe that I should ask those in the state legislature, on the county council, and in our congressional area to fund any kind of transportation, road and transit, that I'm not willing to stand out to them in the front of the parade and take some arrows. I ask them, and I'm willing to support them. And so we'll talk about that more later too. So
I think you raise an interesting point about planning. I think for 50 years, particularly in the high-growth urban areas, we tended to not do as good on regional planning. Probably 15, 20 years ago, we started our RTC, our Regional Transportation Coalition, and it's made up of Dallas and Fort Worth and all the surrounding 7 counties involved in it. And it really has been a major tool in helping connect. Obviously, ultimately, in a region like ours, and even like yours, John, you know, large areas, you can't operate alone. It's too expensive for one city to run a whole system. You've got to leverage federal dollars, state dollars, and you've got to leverage your regional dollars. Because if we can plan for the right-of-way and for the corridors to try to get those through, and if we can partner up with our partners and have a master plan, then we're all better served. The T is in the middle of working on their master plan. The city is updating our master thoroughfare plan, and we had recently had a city council meeting and invited the city to come present a workshop on transit, and it was very interesting, and that's going on all over the Metroplex, and I think that'll just make us stronger by being able to say, as a region, we're working together. I mean, Dallas and Fort Worth used to hardly talk, and now we have weekly dialogue. I know Paul and Gary and a lot of them meet, because it doesn't make sense for us to run a line that stops here and you got to get off and jump on another one.
That's a perfect segue, really, to the next session. Mayor, go ahead.
Yes, well, what both these mayors are saying really resonates in my experience as well. There's no better issue for regionalism than transportation. And when you have one mayor that has an exciting transit project going on in the middle of his downtown, you become everybody else's new best friend. My mayors to both sides of me are clamoring, hey, we need to go out to lunch because I need you to partner with me on some studies to get what you got going spurred out into my community. So it's made, from a personal popularity perspective, it's been a very great thing for me with my fellow mayors. And it just makes a tremendous amount of sense regionally. It can bring it together in ways that other issues just don't have the same sex appeal.
And there's a whole lot of friendly competition. And Mike Rawlings, who's the mayor of Dallas, and I say it's a friendly co-opetition because we're going to work on this jointly.
We get motivated as the transit operator when cities step up and decide they want to invest in this. That really is the best motivator that I know of to say, okay, we're going to partner. And that really is the segue to the next section, which is what can we do to partner this enthusiasm and this commitment at the local level. We're seeing referendums pass 75, 80% around the nation. Conservative states are passing referendums to support public transportation. We're seeing local governments step up and extend their budgets to the nth degree to try to invest in that planning that's so important. The mayor talked about 3 other cities along the line, stepped up and said, we've got to do this for our future. How can we convey all of that energy and enthusiasm here to Washington? Share that with our congressmen. Share with them how important this is to you, your communities, and frankly, Mayor, you talked about community engagement. How do we build that grassroots support that we're evidencing with you and your cities and transfer that here to Washington?
Well, I'll give you a couple of examples. We passed a bond election, a $294 million bond election this past November. $220 million of that is dedicated to transportation, to streets and roads. And the state of Texas passed Proposition 1, which was a constitutional, and we passed that bond election at almost 80%, which is overwhelming for a bond election to pass at 80%. And the state of Texas passed Proposition 1, which was an additional funding, a guaranteed constitutional amendment of several $1 billion a year flowing back into transportation projects. But I think part of what we did was we got out and we did town halls and we advertised it and we talked and we formed coalitions on Prop 1 to pass this state guarantee to get out and talk. But we've done the same thing with Washington. We come up here and lobby fairly often, and when they're home and when they have, people tend to think, and you as mayors understand, you get an invitation to a local elected official or a U.S. senator or House member's election to their fundraiser, and you think, well, they just want me to give them money. That's not necessarily the case. They want to hear from you. They do want your money for their campaign. But you need to be going as transit members, as people working on transit. You got to go talk to them. Catch them when they're home. Catch them when they're here. Tell them how critical it is. Give them the statistics on the growth. Give them the statistics on what's happening. Take them for a ride on your train system or your light rail or wherever you are, but keep them in the loop. Education is what's killing us in D.C. and for us in Austin because they've developed a tremendous disconnect from what's happening at the local leader. And no one knows better what's going on at the local than your mayor and council and can help spread that message. But to do it, you've got to advocate with your citizens because they've got to help you because they're voting for those people also. You got to turn your local citizens on to transit to get DC interested in it.
I agree. In order to afford this, you have to have regional funding. You have to work with your neighboring communities, and you have to pass sales tax. You have to, and I think there is a real appetite out there. All of us share the frustration of getting in our car and trying to get from point A to point B, and that's a common denominator throughout the electorate, throughout all of our communities. So there is that angst to draw upon, and if we can rally regionally with our neighbors, you can you can get an amount of money that's going to attract Washington's attention. You see, from their point of view, the reasonable likelihood of a success stories. Washington loves success stories. They love to come to ribbon cuttings. They love to be able to tell positive stories. And if you can paint a positive scenario in your community, beginning with getting some regional funding, you stand a good likelihood of attracting the federal money you're going to need. It has to, as Mayor was saying, it has to be a regional priority. In our community, in order to expedite things happening, we were able to shift some of the federal STP money and flex it in a way that we could prioritize it for light rail. And by doing that, we expedited things actually happening. We used this TPAN as the phrase we use, but we're using local dollars to expedite the funding. We're paying City of Mesa funds, knowing that the federal and regional money will be here in the next couple of years, rather than waiting 5 or 10 years to make a project happen. So people came to Mesa knowing that this was our priority and that we would put our money where our mouth was, hoping to get paid back, hopefully, in the years to come. But I think that commitment to success attracted the cooperation of the federal government, loosened up the regional dollars in ways that we could focus, because we used some flexibility and said, well, we don't really need some of the street projects that we have on our budget are less a priority than the transit projects. So let's prioritize our money in a way that we can actually do a large, significant project and get it done now instead of 10 years from now.
You know, we have a regional, in our area, is statewide in a lot of things because we're a small state. And we need to be working together. And I had nothing to do with this, but I'm sure glad that others put it in place. We have a unified transportation plan. So we are unified in our transit, in our road, in our active transportation. So in our legislature is in session right now. We'll finish their session this Thursday. And so we have some major transportation funding we're after. And the CEO of our transit district, the MBO or MPO is there as well, hand in hand with their staffs. The city, League of Cities in the state is there together. We also have the business community, the Chamber of Commerce is there with us. We realized that if we weren't united in what we wanted, and we were fighting against each other between transit and roads and this and that we weren't going to get it. To say the least, Utah is not a liberal legislature. Some of our representatives, and I understand their position, are fine to help you as long as it isn't a tax increase. And so now what's happened in our state legislature, what's going on right now, and today will change some things, I think, and go forth from this. But right now, there's two types of financing that they're looking at for this. One is an increase in gas tax, and one is a sales tax. There are different groups that all have a part of this pie, and we have to work together. Our state roads run through our cities. UDOT in our city is finishing a project, a $45 million road project. So I can't worry about city roads and say to the director of UDOT, hey, you do what you want. I don't have any interest in it. He's united with transit as well in this. So the state needs money. They need more money. The city needs more money for construction, and maintenance terribly needs more money in that for roads. So we have that as well. The county needs more money for their roads, and public transportation needs more money. And so we have right now a bill, we have several bills, but the bill that is more encompassing is a sales tax increase where you would get a 0.1 for transit, a 0.1 for local roads, and a 0.05 for counties. And in the rural part of our state where you don't have transit authorities or transit needs, then that 1.1 for transit goes to the county, because you'll have more roads than that. At first I thought, why would a county need roads? We have 30 miles of roads in Salt Lake City. In some of our southern communities, they have 3,000 and 4,000 miles of road, you know, because that's all there are, rural areas. And so we have that, and we also have a gas tax and several bills on the gas tax. One is just a straight increase of 10 cents on gasoline, 5 cents on diesel. 70% of that goes for state roads, constitutionally protected just for roads. The other 30% goes for local roads. The other part of it is to take our gas tax, 24.5 cents per gallon, and change it into a sales tax on fuel so it grows with inflation and has a ceiling and a floor and a ceiling in it. But it's that uniting together, and each of us have our roles. So our fight in the legislature right now is not, it's between the Senate and the House. It's not about the need for more transportation money. A very conservative state, keep in mind. It's not that. It's about, do you do gas tax or sales tax? Or do you do both? Isn't that kind of nice to having mom and dad fighting over how to give the kids more money? I don't care whether it comes out of the left pocket or the right pocket. But the way we've achieved that as mayors is that we've said to the legislature with the sales tax, we don't want you to raise sales tax. We want you to put it on the ballot. We're willing to stand with you and champion the cause. And so what probably will come out is an authorization for it to go from the state to the county council or commission, and have the county council or commission put it on the ballot, and it will be then distributed in the county of origin. It will be distributed that amount in a different ways. But we as mayors, and we're all united on this, are willing to stand up and lock arms. It's not fair if I say to my legislator, get me money, and then I just sit back and let him take the heat. It's my role to be arm in arm with him.
And the other way to get their attention is to talk about jobs. They tend to forget how many, many, many jobs are involved in any transit and any transportation project. And then when you start construction, you've got additional jobs on the construction that come in. And that's a big deal for any official to be able to talk about jobs.
We're going to move this into the Q&A for the audience, but I wanted to summarize, I think, what I've heard today. And frankly, to be successful, you got to have 4 major ingredients from my vernacular. You've got to have good projects. They've got to have good merit, good value added to your community. You've got to have a good team that can deliver them, whether they're construction or operations. You've got to engender that trust in the community that's out there. You've got to put your money where your mouth is and at least come up with the local resources to show your commitment. And then you have to have that community that says, I want it. And it is underscore what the mayor just said. There are 85 cities and 6 counties that have gotten together, along with the highway department and the transit agency and virtually every other decision-making body for transportation, and have endorsed a plan. We're not fighting about what's on the plan. We're just in the weeds, frankly, talking about how to pay for it. Those 4 ingredients, I think, underscore the need here in Washington. We can do it. They can do it too. They can be our partners. I don't want to forget, and Mayor touched upon the fact that a lot of this investment we're talking about in Utah is for state of good repair and preventive maintenance. And to think about a conservative state that isn't talking as much about the shiny bells and whistles, more about potholes and replacing street pavement and running buses, more buses, is the #1 goal in our state. It's an amazing phenomenon that's coming to fruition, and I think that's a story we can share. So success begets success. I think you've seen it in all of these communities, and I think that's the message we take forward here in Washington. So let me open it up to the audience if you have any questions for these mayors, and see if you can provoke them any more. I know you're not a shy crowd.
That's right.
What's
Capital steps are.
Capital steps are waiting.
Mayors, maybe one thing you can share with APTA or us as an organization that we can help carry forward from your comments today.
Well, I love the Stand Up for Transportation. I think taking the message back, how critical it is that this country continue to rebuild its infrastructure, that we continue to offer modern, innovative ways to attract people to use traffic, because it helps us at every level, from air quality, congestion, time saved, productivity, and the health of your community. It's just a great message, and this group can be a great vehicle for helping pass that along.
Great. April 9th, don't forget.
You know, I think the best lesson you can learn from what's happened in our community is the importance of flexibility and of looking at the pots of money that you have and trying to figure out how to focus the resources you do have on the most important projects, to prioritize. Are there ways that you can shift some of the federal and or regional monies to address the top needs? We've all got budgets with a variety of projects on them, and if some of the projects that you have funding for are not the most important projects, then you need to figure out how to make that problem, you know, not be a problem anymore. So that's one of the things I'm proud of that we've done locally that I would suggest that you take a look at.
I think from my perspective is do what you do best, and that's build and operate public transportation. I wish I could tell you that you wouldn't have to worry about your funding, but you do. But tell us as mayors how we can help you with the funding. I have no idea how to build anything, but I need your help in telling me what I need to do and where I need to support and what buttons I need to push. Because my job is to get the funding for you, but I can't do it on my own.
Great.
Sorry for being a little late coming up. To your funding question, you've talked a lot about sales tax and you've talked about other pots of money. Have any of you used tax increment financing, value capture, special assessment districts? And could you just give us a little flavor of how to get the businesses that will be taxed in those areas on board with those funding streams?
When Trinity Rail Express came in '96, following that, it comes to the Intermodal Center, but it comes to what's our old T&P, the Texas and Pacific Terminal, both. And we had very little downtown living, and the T&P building is in a TIF, a tax increment financing zone. And the TIF money was able to come back in and help renovate what the terminal, along with the T and the city money, and then build lofts, residential lofts there, and they sold out in less than a year. But the TIF zone around it is an incredible asset because it helps with the landscaping, it helps with the upkeep on it. There's another area coming in that the T is looking at for transit-oriented development that I believe is also in that TIF. Doesn't it he's telling me, yeah, it extends over to that side. So the TIFs have been an incredible tool for us for reinvestment around these developments. And we expect to see the same thing on TOD developments as TexRail comes in.
That hasn't been part of our formula, frankly. We rely heavily on a regional transit tax. And I think that was passed several years ago, again, based in large part on the angst that our community was feeling over the failure to build highways as well as we should have. So, and wrapped up in that very popular notion of let's build more highways was a component for some transit. And so we're now the beneficiaries of the transit money that really was sold to the public as part of the larger, more aggravating concern about highways. The Phoenix system now is fairly well built out when it comes to highways as a result of this regional tax, and like I say, the smaller component that we're talking about here now has been the transit money that has allowed us to do the other portion, the projects that I've been talking about today.
And our funding for I-35, the major renovation for this thoroughfare across the state, was sadly not getting funded. We just couldn't seem to get it across the finish line until we revamped the plan and put a transit lane up the middle, and suddenly they came in and said, we'll fund it.
In our community, regional and federal funding is what's taking care of the actual building. In this 600-acre development that we're involved in now, I believe my role is to get that land given to the city so we can give it to the transit authority. And we are using, part of that is our CDA. In CDA, we can put in other infrastructure and pay for that. I don't know, but I don't believe we can do that with transit, pay for transit out of the CDA money. I'm not sure of the law there. But we can pay for other infrastructure and then get land donated as a result of that. And we're requiring 20% open space, and that will be in, transit is in that open space definition. And so that's the way we're trying to help at a local level.
You know, there's an international lesson learned here in the Asian properties. They're seeing 40, 50% of their resources come from their land development. In the European properties, there are 20 and 30%. We're having a hard time reaching that yet in this country. It's a long way to go. It's part of our cultural or our institutional infrastructure. There's a lot of reasons why, but there is great progress being made in cities that I know of in the United States, and we need to keep that pressure on. As the mayor talked about community development grants and value capture and those kinds of things, it's a resource. It probably isn't going to be the primary resource for our business, but it's certainly one of those leveraging options that you've talked about today. Any other questions? I'm going to say thanks to these mayors. It's been an incredible, phenomenal